attacks on Formosa. On the first day of strikes against Formosa, Admiral Halsey's carrier aircraft flew nearly 1,400 sorties against the island's 26 airfields. They also hit shipping. Japanese fighters were ready and rose to meet the attackers, but their pilots were poorly trained and hopelessly inexperienced. The defenders were clawed out of the sky, and the Americans caused severe damage to airfields, hangars, and headquarters. Although the American attacks on Formosa were causing immense destruction, the Japanese Navy Commander-in-Chief Admiral Toyoda did not see them as a disaster. Instead, the Admiral believed that here was the opportunity he had been waiting for. On October the 12th, the Japanese flew over 100 bombing and torpedo sorties against Task Force 38, and from the start, the reports sent back by pilots told of massive destruction of American ships. The question for Admiral Toyoda was, should he now throw in everything he had to finish off the Americans once and for all? Toyoda made his choice. He ordered the carrier air groups, waiting on land bases as instructed, to join the strikes. The reports which came back from the latest waves of attacking pilots caused rapturous celebrations throughout Japan. Imperial General Headquarters announced that off Formosa, 2 American battleships and 11 carriers had been sunk and many more damaged. In fact, as reconnaissance soon showed, the Japanese pilots had wildly overestimated their success. The American carrier fleet was intact, and more than 800 Japanese sorties had succeeded in seriously damaging only 2 cruisers. American fighters and anti-aircraft gunners had shot down 500 aircraft, including half of Japan's newly trained carrier pilots. Admiral Toyoda's gamble had been a disastrous failure. On October the 17th, leading ships of the American invasion armada were spotted by Japanese coast watchers approaching Leyte Gulf. Soon after, the Americans were reported to have landed on an outlying island. The Japanese Second Fleet had already been alerted, and now it was ordered to sail for Brunei to refuel en route for the Philippines. The following day, the Japanese Imperial High Command activated Show 1 for all defending forces, sea, air, and land. By now, the first American shells were falling on the beaches at Leyte. The barrage of heavy gunfire by 7th Fleet's Shore Bombardment Group continued throughout October the 19th, and on the morning of the 20th, the shelling reached a climax. On 2 beaches, 13 miles apart, hundreds of landing craft surged towards the shore. Japanese opposition to the landings on Leyte was relatively light. For the moment, the strategy was to fight only delaying actions. By the afternoon, the Americans had secured the beachheads, and General MacArthur, alongside President Osmeña of the Philippines, was wading ashore, fulfilling his promise that one day he would return. What neither MacArthur nor any of his commanders knew was that the Japanese planned to smash their invasion fleet at its anchorage in Leyte Gulf in 5 days' time. After raiding Formosa, Task Force 38's carriers steamed towards Leyte to support the landings. The carriers of the Japanese Third Fleet now sortied from Japan in pursuit. In the Japanese plan, Third Fleet would attack with what remained of its air groups. But its real role was to act as a decoy, luring the big American carriers away from Leyte Gulf. On October the 22nd, the Japanese Second Fleet sorted from Brunei in 2 divisions. Force A had 5 battleships, including Yamato and Musashi, 10 heavy and 2 light cruisers, and 15 destroyers. Force C was made up of 2 battleships, a heavy cruiser, and 4 destroyers. Fifth Fleet was already on the way from Japan, with 3 cruisers and 7 destroyers. Force A would sail north of Palawan, through the Sibuyan Sea, and on through the San Bernardino Strait, heading for Leyte Gulf from the northeast. Force C would sail north of Mindanao, through the Surigao Strait, followed by the cruisers of Fifth Fleet, and approach Leyte Gulf from the south. Meanwhile, 1st and 2nd Air Fleets and 4th Air Army would join in an all-out air attack against the Americans at Leyte on October the 24th. On the 25th, called by the Japanese X-Day, the naval forces would attack simultaneously from north and south, and between them, crush the American invaders. American naval intelligence had quickly discovered that the Japanese Second Fleet had left its anchorage off Singapore, but since then had no information about its movements. Air reconnaissance had been stepped up, but nothing had been found. It was 2 submarines, Dace and Data, that finally succeeded in locating the Japanese battleship force. Not only did they send a full report to 7th Fleet, but with torpedo attacks they sank 2 heavy cruisers and crippled another. Admiral Kurita's flagship was one of the victims, and the Japanese fleet commander had to be plucked from the water by a destroyer. The American submarine's contact report was enough for Admiral Halsey to launch his own scout planes on the morning of the 24th and prepare to follow up with a massive strike against the Japanese fleet. At the same time, the long-planned Japanese counterattacks by aircraft from the Philippines were unleashed on the American carriers. Of almost 200 aircraft launched by the Japanese in raids of over 50 at a time, only a handful broke through. The American carriers' combat air patrol shot down over 60 raiders,